Call to order the,
Recording in progress.
now I'm gonna call to order the regular select board meeting of the Swanton Selectboard. It is June 3rd, 2025, 6 PM. If you would, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, agenda review. Start with Christina.
I have nothing, thank you.
Nicole.
None.
I have nothing to add. Earl?
Just a question on the Swanton Town garage property. Anything going on, or have you heard anything?
We'll add that to old business.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, and remind me if I forget, but I didn't write it down here. Steve?
I'm good.
Brian?
Just something under, I guess would be old business. We've talked about it a while ago, but that's the library sprinkler system, just a minor change in some work that we had budgeted.
Okay, item H, library sprinkler system.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna start with the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion been made, and I assume to approve the regular
Yes,
select board
yeah.
meeting minutes of May 20, 2025. Any further discussion? Here none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Public comments for something that's not on the agenda tonight? The only thing I'd like to add under public comments is Memorial Day. Seems like the parade was a success, and I thought the town and village just looked very sharp with the banners that were put up for the first time this year and all the flags both in the park and on the power poles. Just a great showing of patriotism, and hats off to everybody who participated, and hopefully next parade will be even bigger than this year.
Yes, we had the opportunity to honor a very senior citizen
Yep.
here in Swanton, Gordon
Yep.
Cheney, as,
Yep.
Turned 100 this year, and a World War II veteran, so it was quite an honor for him.
Yeah,
Just while you're on that, I talked to Gordon the next day, and he didn't take any pictures, so if anybody's got any photos, just shoot them to Brian, and then Deb and I'll put together an album for him.
Nice.
Yeah, anything, he didn't care, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you got, I sent a couple, but it wasn't a real good one of like him in the car or anything.
Yeah, I don't know, did you send them to Brian?
No, I'll check and
Okay.
see what I sent it to, but yeah, I
Yeah.
had a couple. One was with the banner, the two young kids carrying the banner.
Okay.
Another one was
And I
at the
think
park, but
anything would be a treat for him, so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really nice ones on the community page on Facebook too.
okay, moving on to law enforcement. Chief, you're up.
All right. So for the town, as this goes around for May of 2025, we had 98 incidents in total. There were, your top 10 incident types were 26 directed patrol, 23 traffic stops, 6 suspicious, 6 motor vehicle complaints, 3 citizen assists, 3 alarms, 3 crash with property damage, 3 threatening, 3 VIN inspections, and 2 animal problems. Of those 98 incidents, there were 23 traffic stops, 7 tickets and 20 warnings associated with the traffic stops, 3 arrests of 3 individuals representing 8 criminal charges, and one of those arrests was associated with traffic enforcement, and there were 14 additional service hours in the month of May.
Were the arrests the result of traffic stops?
There was 1 arrest associated with traffic stops, and I would have to look at the others here, and I think actually the charge number might be a little low, because I want to say that one of the incidents at the end of the month was a pretty severe incident where we had first degree aggravated domestic, unlawful restraint, several other charges, eluding, gross negligent operation, associated with domestic assault that happened in Riverside Cemetery. The female eventually got away from the male and came running to the police department. And then, it was obviously outside of our service hours, but, it's a good example of I'm not gonna turn somebody away with like that and say, you're gonna have to go to Vermont State Police to deal with that call. But it's also a good example of that took me off the road for the rest of the day. There was to get the paperwork done associated with the case, do the investigation. I was done for the whole day. It started first thing in the morning, I want to say just after 8 a.m. and ended after 5 p.m. And the suspect in that case is still loose. We were unable to locate him because when we did locate him that day, he decided he was going to drive away from us at excessive rates of speed down Route 7 and then through the town, Comstock and over to Middle Road, and then we believe Lake Road, and we later found his car abandoned that evening. So he picked up several charges, so I think actually that, like I said, that arrest charge number may be a little low. That was one of the individuals.
Is he in custody now?
No, he is not.
Not yet?
No, he ran away from me today. Again, when I located him today, he was on a bicycle and rode away from me. He's got a parole warrant out for his arrest in addition to the new charges that I've applied for an arrest warrant for and have an affidavit sitting at the PD. So if we do locate him, we can attempt to lodge him on the new charges. But it's something too, it's interesting. So I was sitting in a sequential intercept mile meeting also last week, at the end of last week, which is a group designed to bring multiple different service providers together, including the court system, to address some of the issues that we have related to law enforcement and the services provided. And so one of the frustrations we were talking about is, for example, that day when I was in the meeting, I had encountered an individual who had an arrest warrant. It was probably 9 a.m.-ish when I encountered that individual. So I took him into custody, and again, now I was the only one working, so I was responsible to hang on to him and basically had to stay with him until the court was ready to see him at 1 p.m. So essentially it took me off the road for over 4 hours that day, just because I had to essentially babysit him until I got him to court. Same thing happened today. So we got a call of a disturbance. We go over there, and one of the individuals in the mix of that disturbance had a warrant. So the court wanted to see him at 1, and so we held on to him until 1, and then the court decided that he was going to end up going to corrections. So then we were responsible for transporting him to corrections, which is a lot different than my experience in Chittenden County, where normally we could drive into the courthouse, and a lot of times the sheriffs would take the individual that you had under arrest. You could provide them with paperwork, and then they would handle the rest, and then we would be able to go back into service once that initial piece was done. Now we are the ones sitting with them in the bottom of the courthouse. When the court is ready to see the individual, we are going up into the courtroom with that individual, and then if the court decides they have to go to corrections, in Franklin County, we have to deliver them to corrections, where normally that would be the responsibility of a sheriff. So it is really time consuming and a little frustrating just due to the lack of resources that we have. But a lot of people don't realize, kind of the backside on some of these cases, the paperwork involved.
How come Franklin County Sheriff's Department doesn't operate the same? Aren't there requirements, or?
I'm not sure. It's a good question. So I think there are probably statutory requirements that once we get them, in fairness, and this happened in Chittenden County too later in my career down there, is that sometimes if the sheriffs didn't have the capacity, we would have to still sit with our arrest until they got into court. But once they were in front of a judge, and once the judge made a decision, then I believe statutorily, the sheriffs are the ones responsible for them essentially doing the transport if they are going to corrections.
Does you around the tax for Franklin County?
Yes, and I think they're
That's
hurting
down.
for staffing also. So I know they have a sheriff assigned for court security when you enter the courthouse there, but I just don't know that they have the staffing to staff essentially the holding area underneath the courthouse in Franklin County.
But when they renovate your police station up here, will you be able to put this individual in a cell and not have to?
That's the goal, because our police department is horribly inadequate for any sort of investigation, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We can't separate people. You don't want people sitting together so that they can talk to each other before they're interviewed. Another good example of that was the homicide earlier this month, or earlier in May, I should say, because there were multiple people involved in that that needed to be separated, and our facility, we just don't have the capacity for doing something like that. So, yes, but although that's going to be, I'll be interested to see how expensive it's going to be, because that'll be one of the larger expenses, is creating those cells.
So that meets the statute, meets the requirements, right? I mean, cells are pretty expensive, all you gotta do to make them, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be expensive as far as the renovation goes. So that's the issue, is that the village has paid already, right? The bond just passed for the new electric department and the administrative staff to move over to the new building on the lot next door. And so the issue is how much is it going to cost to renovate, the space that we're in now with the administrative staff? And I think it's going to be a pretty substantial price tag just to renovate that space. I mean, we'll be able to do some things initially. It'll be nice to just be able to spread out and create more room for the officers and have more storage room, because, I mean, we allowed people to come through and take a look, and it is just horribly inadequate currently. And we just don't have the capacity to hold these people. For like today, some of these examples that I've given today, for example, when we had that individual in custody, it essentially shuts down the police department. We close the door to afford privacy to that individual, and the door is locked, and now nobody has access to the police department. Although that in and of itself, I don't think you'll find another police department in the state where you can just walk in and have immediate access to essentially all the staff, right? When you normally walk into a police department, it's a secure space, you're contained in a secure area, and then you're admitted, similar to what happens, for example, if you go to St. Albans Police Department currently, their dispatch center is behind, bulletproof glass, and you can't even see in because it's one-way glass down there. But they have a receptionist back there to then triage whoever's coming into the lobby. We don't have anything like that. I mean, people have immediate access, certainly, to our administrative staff and me at a minimum, because the way our office space is wide open to the public. So it's definitely something that we're certainly looking forward to being able to expand and have an appropriate workspace.
One thing you said, I think, is you're having to cover some of the shifts on the road, right? Is what?
Oh, I am,
with it.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's taken away from. Yeah, that's gonna be a real issue. This whole staffing thing it's taken a while to get better. I mean,
Yeah, and it's the nature of a small police department, right? Is that normally, in an ideal world, we would have probably twice the staff that we have, because then it wouldn't be a worry. Right now, if somebody calls out sick, we are scrambling to fill that shift. I had an officer who was on vacation last week. We were scrambling to fill that night shift position, where Officer Gilbert was gracious enough to, on short notice, adjust his schedule and work nights, and sometimes overlap a little bit into the days, but then I was alone covering day shift, which creates issues.
yeah.
Right. So, and it's certainly the administrative tasks have to take a second seat to any sort of call for service requirements that are on the road. So I'm out there responding to those, which has resulted in some of these cases, the domestic, first degree aggravated domestic case that I spoke about earlier.
Appreciate what you guys do.
Yeah.
And hopefully the staffing issue resolves itself in the next 8 to 12 months. I know we talk about it, and
Yeah, it's
a
difficult.
process, and
Yeah, I mean, we have the 2 open positions still.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to fill one. Certainly, we have had some interest with the addition of a possible second SRO for the elementary schools. But there again, then that'll be their primary responsibility. We would get them back in the summertime, certainly, which would add to our staffing. But it's difficult, and even those 2 full positions, we're still at a bare minimum staffing with those 2 additional officer positions filled.
You'd be in a lot better position if you had them positions filled.
Yeah, we'd be in a better position, but it'd still almost create the same thing as far as on day shift, for example. If that officer was on vacation, whoever's officer
Yeah.
lined up with my schedule, then I would be the only one working while they're on vacation.
Can I get a reminder of the staffing situation in general for the police department, like how many positions there are?
Yeah, so there are 2 open positions now, and we're authorized full strength of 9. Currently we're at 7, and one of those positions is the SRO assigned to the high school.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Comments?
Good job.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Next is the health officer, that's part of the packet, I believe.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, eh?
Yep.
I guess my question would be on May 13th, she had a conversation with Betty Cheney. Did they follow up on that? Do you know anything about that, Brian?
Okay, well, the people who were residing in the house have been served to vacate, because it's got to go through the judiciary process. And until that is done, there's, very little that can be done. I mean,
Yeah.
it's private property. We can't say to somebody or hire somebody to go clean it because they're entering private property. That's a tough situation. But they're served and hopefully get out of there soon.
My wife brought this question up, and I didn't really have an answer for her. The town right now is in charge of the estate.
No,
Who is in charge?
Betty is.
Betty is.
Betty as an individual.
Has an individual.
Right. Yeah.
So, who do these people have a contract with to rent the place?
Nobody. They're squatters, really.
Oh, okay, that answers the question.
But if you're
Yeah.
squatting, you
Right,
have to go through a whole.
right. I understand, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In my opinion, they're
Yeah.
squatting. Yeah.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's what they're doing, because I couldn't answer. I said, well, I don't know, who rented the place to them, but they just kind of moved in on their own, more or less, and,
Well, they were. I mean, it was their.
Relatives, right? I mean,
It was their grandmother's house, and then she passed away, and it was their
Okay.
father. Then it was the father, but the father never really had it. He passed away, and nobody had a will, so they're living there. So that's
They
why
don't
an
have title
estate-
to the place.
They don't have
They're-
title to it, and so that's why an estate had to be forced open to be able to deal with it.
The eviction process, do we have any details on the timeline?
Well, the last I spoke to Betty on that was prior to the events that occurred there, but we were hoping by maybe late summer, August or September, if they don't challenge it. If they just get out, fine. But if they challenge it, then you're gonna go to court and all that. So,
Joel, can I ask a question? No? Oh.
Yeah.
About a specific property or no?
What's that?
Can I ask a question about a specific property for the health officer or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, do you talk to the health officer about it, or?
No, I haven't. That's
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would recommend, you speak
call
to
her
her.
directly and
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be better to go right directly to her, and then if it's something that involves us, she would
Yeah.
bring it back to us, absolutely. Any other questions on the health officer report?
well, there was a conversation at your last meeting, I believe, about possibility of some ordinances.
Right, yeah, and so I've,
And I didn't know if any of these issues would involve those possible ordinances.
Well,
that she's been
right.
dealing with.
It could for future,
Yeah, for future.
and we try to deal with them that way. So, yes, we're gonna take the ordinances from Burlington, St. Albans, take what would apply to Bess, and so I need to get together with her and probably the chief, and we'll go from there. Now, the thing is that depending upon what's the order, it comes to the question of enforcement and then prosecution. Prosecution, you know, do we hire our own attorney, or so that's a question I have to ask the chief, because if it goes to a traffic court situation, you pretty much can represent yourself, or the police officers represent themselves. And actually, years ago, I, rather than the police officer doing something, I prosecuted it, and with the judges okay. We won. So, but you know, but if it goes beyond that, you know, we may have to, you know, determine how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Because the state's attorney may not want to take it on. But if it's criminal, which I'm not sure how many of these cases would be considered criminal, more than civil, would, you know, it's a serious undertaking. And,
Well, so we will be hearing more about
Yes,
that in
yeah.
the future,
Yeah.
looking at some proposals, probably.
yeah.
I would ask that you talk with Betty and try to get us a little more of the timeline, like eviction process, is it so many days, and then they get, you know, then they have the opportunity to challenge it, and that takes so many days
Yeah.
or not, because it'd be something I think all the board members would like to
Good
know.
idea.
Takes 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a while, but
That's the upfront
Yeah.
money asked.
Yeah.
Anything else regarding the health officer report?
Good job.
All right, so I'm gonna open up to a public hearing, and the purpose of the public hearing is to talk about the proposed amendments to the Swanton Land Use and Development Regulations and the Swanton zoning map. So Ross, I think I'm gonna turn it over to you to kind of give us an overview, and then we will, I think the board may have some questions, and then the public, and I know Amy's got a couple concerns, and we'll talk about it.
You want me to come up? I'm fine sitting here.
Yeah, whatever you want to. We get cameras pointing at you right now anyway.
Great.
I don't know if you can hear okay. Yeah,
So yeah, this is the culmination of what, Amy, a 2-year process? Year and a half, it feels like much longer. We've talked a couple times along the way. Essentially, we did a deep dive into the bylaws that hasn't been done, at least in my time on the board, in the last, I think I joined the board in maybe 2010. So 15 years, we've never come close to this. We changed essentially a lot of the zoning districts. Some got merged. Some got reconfigured a little bit to include some properties that were kind of on the cusp of some districts. Some were also changed in a way, so essentially the way our housing especially is now looked at is based upon if you have sewer and water or you have public or private infrastructure, so a well and septic system. So essentially the bulk majority of those changes were sewer and water allows you to be much more dense and also have more units per acre, or partial acre is how it's looked at. And then we also opened up a lot of the setbacks along with the lot coverage, meaning the impervious surface on a piece of property, made it much more liberal, if you will, made it much easier for development. And a lot of that, especially here where there's water and sewer and in other areas, is about infill and trying to make it easier potentially to build out our tax base. One of the things that I keep in mind a lot when working with these things, and that not a lot of people know, over 50% of Swanton is in conserved lands, whether it's federal, state, or
Land trust.
Land trust, thank you. So that really does put somewhat of a constraint on us as a community if we want to grow our tax base and potentially offset costs for taxpayers in the future, right? It's not necessarily an issue today, but 50 years from now, it could be an issue with trying to build out our infrastructure. The other thing that we looked at when we changed some of those bylaws surrounding water and sewer is to make it essentially say if you can get access to water and sewer. Meaning, where my brain goes is maybe Middle Road, even down like South River, up towards the airport where we just extended water and sewer. Places that may allow for infill and allow for someone that might want to put in, if you want to put in 1,000 feet of water and sewer to a piece of property that isn't currently connected, well, then that would allow you to have those denser infill and more units per acre, if that makes sense. The other thing we did is try to simplify some of the regulations, because if you've never been into the documents, if you've never actually looked at our zoning bylaws, or any for that matter, they can be very confusing and very kind of sometimes hard to navigate. So we kept in mind simplicity not only for citizens, but also simplicity for in-house, such as Amy or whoever's working in the zoning office, to try and just make it clear, concise, and that also helps the DRB. So if you don't know, we essentially make the rules, the DRB interprets the rules and oversees properties that are not easily permitted by Amy in-house under our zoning administrator's review. I will say there were a lot of things that talked about, hashed out along the way. These documents, I would say, are a living document that we're already talking about making a fall adjustment to, based around, Amy having some time to really go through a couple permits and take a look at them and see how things are gonna sugar out, or, finding some of the things we definitely missed. Like, I don't think this is perfect by any means, but I do feel it's much simpler, easier for people to understand. One of the things that did, I'll be honest, and I know Amy wants to talk about it, looking at some of the shoreline districts and how there were a large amount of properties because of the way that was set up, getting kind of cut through that district and being partially in and out of a district, especially where my brain goes is Maquam Shore. Looking at trying to align that district more with how the state would view and oversight of properties in that district, and hopefully with somewhat of an intention to simplify it in-house, right? Because Amy had some times in the past where the state would stamp a permit for someone, but then they would come in and Amy would have a conflict and she couldn't necessarily stamp it, or vice versa. So some of the thought there was trying to essentially say if the state kind of is giving a permit and they're restricting along the shoreline, then we shouldn't be stopping people if the state's allowing it. One of the things Amy's got on here that she wanted to talk about too, and is 100% correct, and we've talked about it, Joel, is if the state permits over 20% lot coverage in that shoreline district, allowing Amy to just kind of do it right here in-house instead of having to go to the DRB and get variance for that. Because the shoreline district right now is at the 20%. In the village, however, we're up to what, 65? We've been playing with a lot of those numbers, so which we started at 35?
Yes.
Might have been
30.
So meaning you got a 10,000 square foot piece of property in the village, you can only have 3,500 square feet of roof line and paved driveway. Okay? Now that is closer to 7,500 square feet, as long as you meet the setbacks and some other things. So the hope would be to allow people to better use the property, right? And also spur some growth, try and spur some build out. Some of that thought is accessory dwellings, triplexes, whatever it might be that makes it easier. One of the accessory dwelling things we talked about, and I think it made it in there, we had an example where an accessory dwelling was permitted as a non-attached structure, when in the past, those were looked at normally as an attached structure. So now someone could come in and take a garage, for example, and turn it into an ADU, for example. So, and it like, it makes, you know, stuff like that makes sense. It's an existing structure and we're turning it into housing and it fits on that property and it just makes sense. So that's kind of the mindset I went into it and the board as a whole, and we have a pretty diverse board. We did lose Ed through the project this winter, which was tough because Ed always, when he spoke, he had something that was from a while ago, but it was thought out, and he was bringing up like, that's why that's in there. You're right, Ed. So it's nice to have, you know, that diversity on our board with people coming from different angles and things of that nature. Corey, thoughts?
Yeah, I would hit on a lot of the direction was legislation the state's passed over the last couple of years. The water and sewer thing isn't something we thought of. That's how the state regulates. You know, they passed 2 years ago. Any place you allow a single family home, you have to allow 2 units. Except for there's water and sewer where you have to allow up to 4 units as a permitted use. So that's, and then they require where there's water and sewer, you can't require a lot any larger than 1/5 of an acre for a single family home, so therefore a 4 unit, just the logic plays out. So we were looking at the housing zone. It was, I think to Ross's point, whether it was shoreline or the housing, we tried to align it with state regulations of those pieces of land use. So that way as we go forward, you know, your community kind of matches what the state's already told you have to match anyway.
And to tag on to that, to mention, to you know, talk about Corey whenever it was possible, he directly put the language to refer to state statute. Excuse me, meaning if state statute changes, our bylaws automatically will have, say, refer to the statute, not this verbiage, if that makes sense. So that might make it harder for Amy and or the public, knowing that Amy might have to look up current statute when she sees refer to statute, but it means our bylaws will automatically be prepared if next year the state makes changes to housing or whatever it might be. And that also keys into definitions, defining things, refer to this state statute. And if that statute changes, it's all taken care of. So a lot of it, like I said, was like kind of trying to streamline things because it was and still is a very cumbersome document that most people would be like, what do I do with this? How do I even know where I live? What is the R5 district? You know, so, and it's not R5 anymore.
No. I would just, for the public's knowledge, we live in a Dillon's rule state. So those who are like, well, why would you just automatically go along with the state? Because you don't have a choice. It's a municipality, and I just put that up for people who don't know. So basically, municipalities only exist in the state of Vermont because the state allows you to exist. And there's a precedent across the country. Most states are Dillon rule states. It's a long Supreme Court case from Iowa that they tried to stop a railroad from going through that the feds wanted or the state wanted. So all way of saying we can do all these things, but the state could rewrite zoning standards next year, and you don't have a choice on a lot of that stuff. So.
And the last thing I want to mention, just because I think it might be on some of your minds, is when we're talking about making changes, I was on a call today with regional planning, Greta, and a prospective entity that is looking at the RIV. And I've seen like a sketch that they're kind of thinking for the project for the RIV. So the hope is regional is going to take a look at how a type of infill development for a property like that would fit. And the way we see it is like a common court, like
Cottage court.
And so it could be multiple dwellings on one piece of property that is jointly owned by an association. Those dwellings are individually owned, almost like a condo that's detached, if you will. And allowing for infill, because what we know is there's a lot of larger, older homes in the town, in the village especially, that may at some point in our future Where my brain goes is like Dollar General. They took down a few properties and put in something new, allowing for that kind of rebuild and doing it in a smart way where someone might take 2 or 3 properties, tag them together and put in something that's a little more appealing to the eye and a little more friendly to homeowners and potentially also financially more feasible than a large commercial multifamily building, etc. So regional is taking a look at these bylaws surrounding that particular property and project. But I also asked Greta, I was like, well, you're in there, shred them. Like, give us some good input. If you see some things, Greta, our hope is in the fall to jump back into these after people have time to digest and make some changes. And so she made a note to come back to us in September with kind of her notes and understanding and say, hey, these are some of the bugs we found along the way. And that's what we're here for.
Okay, so explain the process. This public hearing completes. These become effective?
They're effective once the planning commission sent them to you. You now have 150 days from then to pass these, or make slight changes and pass them before they're not good. But they're in effect for 150 days.
They're in effect for 150 days, even though they aren't approved. But that's the way the state statute talks about it. Okay. I bring that up for the board members. So these are in process right now. I'd like to ask a few questions. I don't know if other board members have any. Amy, I know you've got some, and maybe some other in the crowd, but
the one thing I will, just when it comes to that, and I talked to Greta about this a little bit today, is any changes, etc. today can be made, obviously. Once that new document is given to the public, we then have a 15-day period before the next meeting can happen to be able to then approve those changes. Does that make sense?
yeah, I guess I don't follow you. So let's say we talk about something tonight and we say, yeah, that should be changed.
After 15 days, we have 15 days, then there's another meeting to approve it again. Regardless, we have another meeting after this one.
Right,
To
I know
approve
there's a
these. We just have to have, from the time the public gets the revision.
Give them 15 days.
They have to have 15
Okay.
days between getting that document and the next meeting. It's not necessarily 15 days from today, it's 15 days from those changes getting put out.
Published, okay?
Yep,
They have to be legally posted then.
I would assume so.
Yeah,
And
it's gotta be.
Okay. So,
we were talking, and it doesn't have to be, the plan originally was July 2nd. First to be the second
Yeah.
meeting we needed, which gives us more than the 15 days. Sorry.
okay. So shoreland and rural districts, minimum lot size of 1 acre, both of them have that. They have a frontage and lot depth, the same of 150.
Minimum.
Right, understand. One has setback of 15 feet and the other 25. Why?
For which ones?
Shoreland and rural district, minimum 1 acre lot, frontage and lot depth, minimum 150 feet.
Yep.
Yet one of them has 15 feet setback
The
from the
shoreline?
side and 25 on the other. I mean, I would think it'd be consistent between those two because the lot size is the same. I understand there's smaller lots and you've got that taken care of, but this is right up in the,
At the top of the list.
Yes.
It could be just so would my personal assumption would be we would go to all 15 if we made that change to 15.
see, I would say 25 because you've got 150 foot. First of all, you're not gonna have much land to develop, but if you have a 150 foot lot, 25 on each side allows you to put a 100-foot ranch there, wide ranch.
True.
My suggestion is that they both be 25, but that's something that, I don't know tonight we're gonna discuss too many of these, but I got about 3 or 4 others just to talk
That's what
about.
we're here, yeah.
So that's one, I think it should be 25 at both, because it's 150 feet. You got plenty of room on that lot to develop it. Why restrict it to 15?
The other thing to note, if you did or didn't see, there is a table in there for that shoreline district decreasing those setbacks based upon the current lot size. So if they're current non-conforming.
Correct, and that also got put into the rural, as we talked about at your other
Because of
meeting, because
the other-
it makes sense with
Exactly.
a,
So if somebody has a pre-existing lot that's small, they have an option not to have to go before the development review board. You have an option to, because they can move closer because it's a pre-existing.
Yeah.
A pre-existing
less-
lot has,
yeah, right here's the different
Yeah.
sizes that get
Okay.
different setbacks.
So it's 3/4 of an acre gets a little smaller, half an acre gets a little smaller,
Yeah.
quarter acre gets a little smaller, to also take some of that workload off of.
Joel, to your point, I think the setbacks were originally 50 feet because the road frontage used to be 200, so I think we cut them in half, just to cut them in half.
Yeah.
Not to line up with the shoreline, but in the rural district. Originally, you guys required a 200 square.
Yeah, no, I realize that, what I'm saying now, if you're saying 150 feet, then both of them should have the same setback, I think.
Or-
And I'm not here to strong arm you, but I think we should agree that 25 feet's
No, I-
reasonable for 150 foot of lot frontage.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then
How about the
people-
lot coverage though? Aren't we governed by, we can only put so much, we can only use so many square feet of a lot? So with the 15 and 25 conflict with the,
We've increased lot coverage so much,
We didn't touch them, I don't think, in rural, and we can't in shoreline.
Shoreland was.
We went from 15 to 20 to match state law.
Yep,
Shoreland's 20% lot coverage. What you talked about tonight isn't in this yet.
but it should be.
And because the state uses 20%, and if you go over that, you've got to go with some special, I forget the term they use, but put in some drainage wells or something, you know,
Yep.
et cetera. But if you're gonna do that, and tonight I don't think we're gonna get an agreement on it, if we're gonna exceed 20, you should have a max, even from a Swanton Town perspective, there ought to be a max. The state's only gonna let you go a couple percent over, I think, no matter what you do, because they really want you 20% or less. But I would say there should be some max in there if you're gonna go with that verbiage.
and that could affect the setbacks, your coverage.
It could, but 20%, with these smaller lots and the setbacks they have, you're gonna exceed 20% if you go all the way to that setback. I just went through that whole permit process last spring. Yeah, you would be able to get to your 20% with the limits
But you
they
can't
have
go over
there.
25 even with the setbacks,
Right,
And
or 20.
20.
so you know too, while we're talking about shoreline, and it just popped into my head. Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, we also took and lowered the front setback to allow some of those properties to set back further from the lake. Is that correct, Corey? So the thought process was, we had a big front setback, but many of those properties in that shoreline, right, such as your house, Joel, it's pushing the house closer to the lake if they were to kind of use that. So allowing potentially to ease back, knowing Maquam Shore is 40-mile-an-hour zone and a slower traffic, which then potentially helps with setbacks from the lake and the watershed and thinking about runoff and.
Are you sure you lowered for the front?
We talked about it
50 feet is what it shows.
for shoreline.
And smaller lots, it drops to 40.
Yeah,
for
which
the
is.
smaller
which is
35,
Smaller
35.
way
We did it for the
back.
smaller lots because they couldn't get that deep in. A lot of times you asked, I forgot what the original number was, but we started like playing around and we're like, you can't actually build. You can't.
Because of that setback.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thought, and the other thing that's very hard to keep in mind, and I know.
Yeah, so we
you
went
know
to
this.
35 feet if you're under a half acre.
Yeah, I know you know this, Joel, but there's very seldom area, if you think about Maquam Shore and Hog Island, is there gonna be even any new full 1 acre lots? Is there gonna be any new lots along there at all that are gonna get subdivided? Right, if you think about it, all of that is essentially built out in lots, and the only way that we would get larger lots than what's there now is 2 or 3 properties getting put together. Does that make sense?
For the most part, I think on the other side of the roads, there may be some development potential, which gets into out on Hog Island. If you change to rural district, what used to be shoreland then you're gonna not allow like boat storage, repair, sales, which
We can have it,
someone
yeah.
may wanna do that, you know?
Yeah,
And you may not want that in all of the rural districts, but out in West Swanton, there may be somebody who's got a few acres on the other side of the road that under the current zoning could do what a lot of people in that area do. They have boats and different things and want to store boats, but by changing that to the rural district, that's been removed.
Yeah, but you also would lose like the ability to have an apple orchard if you move it back into shoreline. So
I mean, that's the trade-off, but that's what we've done
Yeah.
right now by I shouldn't even say the proposed change, by the change that's in effect, with the map change.
yeah.
And to me, you're taking away some potential of development out in that area.
And, I mean, this has been a contested issue, right? To say lack of a better word, and I mean, this isn't a me issue, this is a 2 votes before our commission, I'm open to opinion, you know, we're open to suggestions. The thought is if you were to stand on McQuam Shore and look towards Middle Road, those are all majority, other than a couple, larger home lots, even once you get down by the pump house and you continue north from even by your house. And the same would go for a large part of McQuam or West Swanton. If you look at like what Macy's is looking to develop down through there, like yes, is it close to the shore? But again, the thought was trying to align somewhat with how the state viewed a lot of that to allow it to be easier. And a lot of those properties were getting cut in half. So if you think of a few of them just down the road from you, that delineation was going into their property, and is more than 50% of that in shoreline, is less than 50% of that in shoreline, like looking at some of that and trying to make it a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, I'm not talking McQuam Shore. What I just talked about was
Okay.
out in West Swanton. So I just bring that up for West
Yep.
Swanton. And I think Earl had your hand up.
Well, what, are there a lot of differences in the conditional uses between the 2 districts?
I have,
There's a couple, Amy I think went through it
yeah.
and looked a little deeper. And again, these are changes that are open to being
Well, I
shredded.
am gonna throw out, it was brought up at a public hearing to take a real good look at that, because making the changes
Yeah.
to the map has an effect on that, and I don't see where too many of the conditional uses were moved from one district to the other.
Well, I can, understand your logic behind the map, but the conditional uses, I think, might be the issue.
Yeah.
More than anything, because there's not a lot more development you're gonna see along that shoreline anyway.
the biggest ones we saw were marina and boat sales, storage, and repair. Well, you're not gonna have a marina unless you have water.
But you might on one side of the road where it's allowed, and then you wanna put the boat storage and repair on the other side of the road, and now you couldn't do that. So yes, you're right, the marina definitely,
Yeah.
Or the
Oh,
store, or whatever goes with the marina.
I mean, those were the 2 big ones we definitely talked about. I would say Earl, on your side of Hog Island, the thought is like Church Road, you can't even see the lake other than Charcoal Creek. And so that was some of that as well, like, is that any different than driving down towards, past the refuge and headed towards that end of town? So yes, that whole peninsula, if you will, on the north side of 78 originally was shoreline, but a large part of that is.
Yeah, like I say, I'm not gonna debate the issue of changing the map. I'm more concerned about that being a conditional use in the rural area, because it makes a lot of sense. If someone on the other side of Lakewood Drive ever got into something, that there's some potential here or there.
Yeah. So are you guys, do you want to change the conditional uses? Do you want to change the map? Like,
I think we could change the conditional use and say in West Swanton, if they had that conditional use, I don't know that.
yeah,
So boat storage sales and neighborhood stores, maybe, on that in the rural district.
I mean, in my mind, could argue to add it to the entire rural district, because is boat storage any different than a contractor's yard? You know, you're looking at boats, you're looking at equipment. I would say we could add it. I mean, I haven't thought this through, but is looking at shrink wrapped boats any different than looking at a contractor that's got, you know, 10 pieces of equipment, a couple piles of spoil, and building materials on a large chunk of property? I would say no. If someone has a chunk of property and they want to store boats on it,
Could be a conditional use, so then the DRB would regulate how they want the boat
Exactly.
storage to take place.
Yeah.
I would also argue your rural district has storage facility. I would say you can store whatever you want in the storage facility.
that's a very valid point too.
Whether it's boats or not.
Well, I'm also looking at motor vehicle.
Well, we just wanna make it clear, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Cause, so, I mean, I get the boat sales. The storage piece to me is storage facility, yeah, we have storage container and storage facility.
That's where definitions come in.
Yeah.
And trying to refer to the state the best we can is, I know it might be hard for Amy when she goes to look for a definition and sees refer to VSA da, and she's gonna go check the current bylaws, but it will mean that it's not, you know, changing. I have another thought about boat storage, conditional use.
Storage facility, a building for goods serves an accessory to a retail store or temporary storage of goods, household goods by the general public. So we could either expand that definition, change it to boat storage and sales. I mean, how would you want it? I would almost expand storage facility definition, because that would include cars,
Campers,
boats.
Not much.
Yeah, I'm more apt to just say boat sales, storage and repair, because the storage
Yeah.
facility in rural makes you have a building, so then the stuff is put inside the building and that sort of thing. That's my take on it, but.
No, I'm for adding,
I just wanna get a better understanding. Amy, on this, what you just handed us, you got some stuff yellow highlighted. Is that new or old or changed?
No, it's what we have.
It's
now.
what you have,
Yes.
and the stuff that's not highlighted is getting added?
No, it's just the difference between the R1 and the shoreland.
R1 has the highlighted stuff, shoreline would not.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
And like I said to you, the motor
well, I don't,
vehicle repair,
I think
do
they
we
should,
want that on Long Island? You know, on the, either side, really,
Yeah.
depending. I mean, just something to look at.
We've got boat storage and repairs, I mean, the vehicle, yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't know, I just,
well, I'm looking at this and, boy, I've been involved way back with this shoreline. People get really excited about that.
oh, I know.
But I don't see why the conditional uses can't be all the same. I mean, there ain't a lot of difference between one and the other. And some of this stuff is practically not gonna take, you know, it's gonna have to take.
I think our view on the conditional use in rural, when we talked about it, was highest and best use. If you're buying land out in Hog Island, you're building a house.
Yeah, but I
And quite
mean,
frankly, in Vermont, just about everywhere, unless you're in a village center or an interstate exit,
but I'm just
your
saying,
bang for your buck is building a home.
combine everything you have here and put it all down.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's,
I don't know if we wanna go,
you know, like say on shoreland, you know, do you want a garden center
right,
on the west side of McQuam Shore Road?
It's not ever gonna happen. You ain't gonna worry
Well,
about
it's
it.
in here,
I don't know.
it's in here.
Christine Oliver texted me and said
No,
he was
we got
trying to chime in,
junkyards.
but I
You
don't
do?
think we could hear him. I'll tell him maybe he's muted.
That's not a
He's
conditional
muted
use.
himself.
Doesn't make a difference, there's no.
Yeah.
Well,
Oliver, can you unmute yourself?
He was fixing a drainage tile that was blown out. Like, texted him to see if it was coming.
yeah.
We got you now, Ollie.
Okay, did you need something? I couldn't hear you for a second.
No, I was just going off your text. You said you were trying to chime in, but we couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, I was just mentioning the one reason we changed that shoreland district map was because the state's now regulating shoreland, and the way our district was drawn, the state would regulate the half closest to the water, and then we would have to regulate the half away from that. So you might have even the same property with two different rules, and people weren't really in favor of that.
Well, I think that some people have the idea that just because the state regulates the shoreland, that I don't have to do anything.
No.
We tried to write it that way.
We tried to make it that way.
We still have bylaws that we have to follow.
Yeah, the state, under the Shoreland Protection Act, is looking at coverage and so on, and the preservation of the trees and that sort of thing.
Right.
They're not getting into the conditional uses and that's that sort of thing.
Yep.
So there is a reason we have a shoreland district and a certain limitation on what goes in that shoreland district. And the state looks at the Shoreland Preservation Act for the things I just mentioned, not
Right.
what type of development goes there. It's mostly the coverage of the land and protecting stuff walking. Yeah.
Is it fair to say that a town can be stricter but not more lenient? So actually, we're being as lenient as we can if we follow the state statutes.
That was our vision.
Which is, many people are converting some of these dwellings to year-round structure, year-round dwellings and things of that nature. I mean, if the consensus is we want to restrict, as a board and as a... Mute him. He was in an excavator, I knew that. If the consensus is we want to restrict that, we can have that conversation. I guess some of my personal vision is to, it's people's property. We want to help them use it in the way they see fit is part of that vision. Within reason, right? We're not going crazy. So, but if the consensus of the select board and our PC is to restrict more, like I'm open to that. I'm just one person that's here. We're a 4-member board right now.
No, don't get excited, I didn't say that. But I assume this new map takes in the fact that the state says this is high water mark and this is health. So many feet away from there is going to be lake shore.
It's
Shoreline.
200 or 250 feet or the road. So a lot of instances, our line just hits the road.
Yeah.
And that again is part of that simplification, right? Because sometimes where does that 600 feet fall on the other side of the road and into a piece of property if it previously.
And this is where we were getting back to a lot of the things, because a lot of the things in Shoreline went to your DRB. Your DRB told us in multiple meetings that they're overworked, and that's why it's so slow to get to the DRB process. So the more we thought, Shoreline's an easy one. You go through the state permit process, which takes a while.
Yeah.
And you gotta get engineers involved, and you gotta, they're not lenient. Don't you say the state of Vermont's not lenient. So our thought was, they show up with a permit.
Yeah.
It's similar with wastewater. You have to get a wastewater permit in a lot of instances. Why does Amy need to go through a paperwork on wastewater in other parts of the town? If you show up with a state wastewater permit, you meet that definition, like you're good to go.
Yeah.
The other, lost my train of thought.
Yeah, let me jump in. So are we saying we have any issues with what is in the shoreland district for uses right now?
Well, I'm willing to compromise if you want to restrict the shoreland as defined by the state of Vermont, but to the ones that are there now. But in the rural districts, I think you ought to certainly allow, with boat sales and, because you're going to see some commercial development in that area eventually.
Let me clarify, the state does not do anything about the conditional use list.
I know, but they have they say this is shoreline, this
Right,
area.
but they just look at the lot coverage. They don't say you can or cannot have a marina or a kennel or any of that. So this conditional use list, this permitted use list is something the town of Swanton approves, and the state does not control the permitted uses or the conditional uses.
Correct. So,
What I'm talking about is one area is shoreline, the other area is rural. So if you're gonna have some different conditional uses in the shoreline area than you do in the rural area, that's what we have now.
Yeah.
But and I'm just saying, I don't think the rural area shouldn't be able to sell boats and repairs and have boat storage.
and maybe because then, you know, if you think about some of those properties, and I'm not trying to restrict things, I'm just thinking out loud, does it make more sense to have that storage and whatnot in the rural district and not in the shoreline district, knowing that a lot of those properties are smaller and it's prime real estate? And let's face it, the way I look at it, it's somewhat of a free market, if you will. Like, if you think about our shoreline, that's the most expensive per acre piece of properties in our community, right? Like, are people gonna wanna cover that with a commercial use? Maybe not. Are they gonna more wanna use it for residences and recreation? Probably. So some of these changes may never be used. Does that make sense? Like, or was that a crazy thought?
Well, the storage isn't in shoreline right now,
Right.
storage facility.
Yeah.
Right, so it would be across the road, not in that prime real
Right,
estate.
that's
and,
right.
And, you know, so it would help potentially Macomb Shore, or not Macomb Shore, but West Swan.
I think that's, you know, the way to go, because, you know, people need opportunities on property they own, and they could have a self-employed business there in that area in West Swanton. Possibly even in Macomb, up the middle road up through there, so, and that's in the rural district too, I'm assuming.
And I'll be good, we didn't change any use in shoreline or rural district for that matter, except adding two-family dwelling to meet state
Yeah.
So
law, so.
But I mean,
we're in agreement that boat sales, storage and repair,
Yeah, it
the
should be in
R1
there.
or residential.
the R1,
rural.
Yeah,
rural.
Talking about
Coming out
rural.
of shoreline.
yeah, rural, R1, yep.
Mixed use,
Mixed use too.
R1, I didn't know.
I think Nick has a question.
The hard part with mixed uses is typically handled.
Be right with you, Nick.
Okay.
And
You know,
the-
that's like the building that has two, like, commercial and housing in it. You usually keep that out of your rural district.
Well, we've got it in shoreland.
Because I think you guys have that one
Potentially.
store,
a home with a store or something like that.
down below.
A market, if you will. The other thought is, you know, let's, part of the mentality, I talked to Amy a little bit about this morning, like, we're gonna have some permits essentially come through, but looking at these conditional uses again, sitting here, I'm thinking, kennel, shoreline district, do we really want a kennel in the shoreline district now that we know where it is? If we're gonna define it the way we do, if that's our, you know, highest bang for our buck, I don't know. So the thought is, like I said, these are the things we're gonna kinda chisel through starting in September. Is there gonna be a kennel show up in our shoreline district between now and December? Probably not. So that's the thought. What's that?
Never say never.
Did I just, yeah. did
No,
I just give-
but I do agree that it's something to look at and say a few of these in there should come out, I think. Especially because we limited the shoreland
To what
like
it
you're
is
talking
now.
about. Nick?
In regards to keeping boat stores in the shoreland district, the only thing I see is that it may be advantageous for a boat storage business to have easy access to the shore in terms of launching boats, what I would think of.
It's in there right now and we're not suggesting taking it out. It's actually in the shoreland.
But I heard a suggestion about possibly taking it out and just making it rule.
Yeah, I don't,
No, adding it.
We're gonna add it to across the road, so what it would be is across Macomb Shore, the west side could now link the properties across with that And I might have mentioned something to that effect
Yeah.
when I was talking about the best bang for our buck or our highest, priced property around. But that was, not necessarily what I was intending.
I just have a question.
Yes,
At the last meeting, I think I asked about these little motels we have now along the
Yes,
shore.
sir.
And you said you were gonna look at those later this year.
That's on the list to,
And so right now, it's a conditional use, you can have a little motel, you don't need a permit, under the shoreline district, shoreline,
accessory
number,
adapted.
number 4, under conditional uses.
It wouldn't be a campground.
Shoreline bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
A bed and breakfast is usually one larger building.
Oh, we got 2 floors on the court.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are the things we're gonna, so if
yeah.
you.
When
1,
when
2,
you
3,
say
4,
one building
5,
though,
4.
Corey, you're talking about one building with something internal. I'm talking about the ones that all of a sudden pop up and become little motels.
Yeah, I don't think that's permitted.
Well, there's a lot of them down there.
You're talking like
Airbnb?
Yeah,
Oh, Airbnbs, that's an ordinance. You're not gonna do that in this. You're gonna have to do what Burlington did and outlaw Airbnbs.
Good luck.
And then you're gonna probably get sued by Airbnb.
that's fine, I mean,
I would talk to, I would have legal counsel.
so what you're saying is if I own a house, I can Airbnb it, we can't regulate it under zoning is what I'm hearing.
Short-term rental. Yeah, I mean, because anything that's rented under 2 weeks a year, a lot of time, that gets into, the state's been trying to
Fire
grapple on.
marshal is,
The state's been grappling on how to handle it. They haven't found a way. The LCD, like, across the country, that usually becomes an ordinance thing.
Okay, so we gotta get smarter on that piece if we want to then, because that's.
And I would get a lawyer involved in that, because
Yeah,
that's
sure.
gonna be,
a freestanding building, rather than just having a B and B attached inside your
because
dwelling.
what you're gonna be concerned about is every local who's been renting their camp for 60 years, once you outlaw it for Airbnb, you have to outlaw it.
Well, I
You
don't,
can't treat-
I
I know,
don't
but
think
you
that's,
can't treat businesses differently.
That's where the legislature.
yeah, and that doesn't apply here. These people that have rented their camps for 2-3 weeks a year to pay for taxes, that's a whole different story. I'm talking about those that have converted property to a motel. That's just what these are.
Yeah, I would get a lawyer involved in that, because I think you're running into
Sure, yeah.
some
Okay.
pretty big case law stuff
Alright.
there. I think that's outside of at least what I'm comfortable advising on. I think it's.
Okay, I think that's what we need to do is
Yeah,
come
yeah,
up with the
absolutely.
questions and
Yeah.
ask them so we're on solid footing.
Yeah.
Okay. Shoreland, rural, Amy. I know
So you
got some
guys have covered that. You have a good handle on that. The other, table 2.4.17. So the residential district has 10-foot side setbacks. And so the chart doesn't match.
What's
And I kinda, this is what I came up with. I don't know if.
these are the things that Amy's gonna find over the next 3 or 4 months that we're gonna be like, add that to September.
This we can make, because one just.
Tonight, yeah, but there's gonna be this, we've got here.
But everybody has to be agreeable to what I've done.
I think it makes, we're trying to, so you guys know too, an accessory structure for a garage on a piece of property would be a detached garage on the top line. So originally that was 600 square feet, I think it was, because my garage is 2030. So it was originally 600. The conversation was, well, that's not quite enough room for a 2-car garage. It's very tight, it was just under. So we increased that a little bit. So essentially what that can do is allow this 800 square foot garage to be closer to the property lines than another structure, like other than the main structure, if that makes sense. So Amy found that the setbacks were more than the side setbacks in that district, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So these setbacks were actually more restrictive than what the bylaws actually say. And so we were talking about changing some of this, same with like the garden tool shed. 5 feet, it should be a 5 feet setback, not a 15-foot setback, both side and rear, both of them.
I don't think they were more aggressive, so we don't have a 10-foot setback anywhere. I think we were just making it,
Yes.
We were trying to,
so I'd said that.
I think it got, it's an
10
oversight is what it is.
Yeah, in the village, yeah.
So,
But the other
I
one.
don't either.
I'll make a copy of this. I
So
think you probably already seen.
the old standards were less
Yes.
restrictive than the new ones.
They
Yes,
were more
we talked
more
about it.
restrictive.
Generally
And I would
speaking,
say this
across
one
the
here
board, we
was
try to get lead less restrictive.
Like pick on Quam Shore and right, this would be
You're
the same
100%
thing
right.
out in
Yep, same.
Hog Island, with a very narrow lot.
Yeah, if you got existing
If
small
you put the
ones.
guy, if you put the shed 15 feet from the property line, why? Get it 5 feet, you can still maintain it, not be on your neighbor's lawn, but it fits in with the small.
The village was.
Yeah.
Go to Florida.
Does she have that?
I just made, I.
Oh, well,
I-
5 feet
I
from the
changed
line.
all across the board to be, yeah, just. So again, these are some of the oversights
Right here,
where,
here's what he did.
I didn't know what the right hand was doing along the way a little bit to make some
10.
changes.
Okay.
Make 'em-
Well, I think these
Okay.
changes should
And I'll
probably
scan-
go
I'll keep
forward,
that, and I'll
so
scan
there'll be a
for
bit
you.
and more properly taken
Okay.
care of, so we can do,
Okay.
you know, when our final approval, at least these changes are done.
Then, if anyone doesn't have any other discussion on the sheds and stuff, like, I'd like to ask about art walls.
That one we did come up, we never circled back, did we?
No, we
came up a while
should
back.
circle back. It is a structure. I don't know what the exact verbiage should be. It's not a sign. So we've been very lenient at letting art walls go. But to me now with revisions, it's something and tonight we won't solve it. But I think it should be on your list of things for the next revision to get art walls
No, please.
as some discussion on what it takes to get a permit, because it should be permitted and what it can and can't have.
And I would say, I think if you were around, we probably would have talked about it again because it's been on Amy's radar too.
Well, let's help Amy with art walls.
That would be great.
So, like I said, if she was here, that definitely would have been taken care of.
Road construction standards.
Yes.
That wording is just a little confusing. I know what you're getting at regarding the engineer approving the road. But are you gonna approve it before any certificate of occupancy for a house? What if the development is large enough, it's phased? Then
That
the
was-
approval should be in phase. I think that definition should be looked at, that wording should be looked at a little
Yep.
bit. And especially if you're gonna have a subdivision where you might put 5 and then another 5, you shouldn't have to require that road built all the way out to the end.
We talked quite a bit about this, Joel, and that was the mention I was gonna make earlier that slipped my mind, I couldn't remember what I was gonna say, was around these, roads and driveways and aligning with the town's.
Yeah, I saw you added that in a different
Yeah.
spot about our takeover policy.
And the other thought was, some of that could potentially open us up to, like, legal, if you will, if we're withholding certificate of occupancies or permits based around road permits and some of that stuff. So the conversation was, maybe that's a bigger conversation with you all as a select board, because it might cause some friction. And or governance and potentially putting Amy like example this winter with a property that was kind of not in conformance, but so looking at the teeth that the town wants to use and like ordinances, if you will, based around some of those things. The other thing to mention is changing to align with the 911 standards. So we did make it so it's over 3 or more properties becomes a road, a private road, and 2 or less is a driveway, and the standards are different. It used to be 4, but it was causing issues when it comes to 911 and having a
And we removed dwelling units because if right now you're on a shared driveway and you had an ADU, which is allowed by state law, does that have to become a private road? So we made it 3 distinct lots.
So each of those 3 lots could have 2 units on them. meaning there could be 6 units.
Or theoretically, any driveway to a fourplex is now a road, which I don't think anybody wants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you've got a very valid point, Joel, and we did talk about that, and that's one of those things, we could go on for 2 hours one night, like trying to really dig into something like that, and
Yeah, but I don't see.
I would look to, if these guys in the future, the state just passed the most monumental probably infrastructure bill they've done in our lifetimes. This new CHIP program is gonna allow any one parcel to be a TIF district. So a developer is gonna come and work on an agreement with you guys, to their point, to his point here, they're gonna wanna build as much of that road as they can of that project, and they're gonna wanna get as many of those houses up quick, because then the property taxes, if you guys approve it, they're gonna pay for that road, they're gonna pay for that water sewer, they're gonna pay for the utilities in and out. Like, that's a significant investment. Your Southern Growth District is prime for this CHIP program, especially because there's one landowner or 2 landowners on very large pieces.
Tracks.
They're gonna be able to, you got your TIF district without the headache of a TIF district. And there's a lot of money in it. And so, but your regulations, I don't know what they look like, but in time, as you guys start to imagine what these projects might look like, they may change how you want to regulate some of this, because people are going to be building those roads, and that, you know, it's going to look, I don't think you're going to see the 5 and 5 and 5 anymore. I think people are going to be like, no, I get one chance to borrow this money, I want to go and do it, because they only got 10 years to borrow it.
All right, I'm just asking you to take a look at that's on page 88,
Yeah, well,
the word.
I'd like to comment on
Yeah.
that too. I mean, what you're saying right now is if I wanted to build 3 houses this year and 4 next year, I had to put the entire infrastructure, road infrastructure in.
No, but you'd have to go get the project approved by the state and with the town, and you guys, so the way for a CHIP to work, a private developer can't just.
No, I'm
he's talking about building the road itself.
Yeah.
But you're gonna, I think you guys are gonna.
Outside of that CHIP thing.
The way it's worded now is the road's gotta be in and certified by the engineer prior to any certificate of occupancy being.
But it could be, and the conversation we had was putting some of that into potentially like the DRB's hands, being able to split that up
You
into
can put,
chunks.
unless the DRB approves phase in there, that's why I say, take a look at that wording and.
Yeah, that's,
I think you can clean that up, so.
Yeah, that's pretty restrictive, and that could hold back development.
It could.
You know,
Yep.
they'll just go to another town.
no, and if the DRB, but again, we are also wanna try and make it clean and not put a lot on the DRB, as you know, those guys, they get pretty busy and
They're gonna have to start meeting a couple times a month. That's what they're gonna
I
have to do.
said that once and I thought I was gonna get.
We used to do, we used to do that, but anyway, I just, take a look at that, 'cause I think.
Yeah, that's, I think that's gonna be bad for the town.
I mean, I'm open to, if we can put something like this in there in the next day or 2, I'm open, that change can be done.
I think it's a fairly easy look at that and add a little bit and then clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, I can clean this up tonight or tomorrow and have something over to Christian. I'm more worried about, does the planning commission have to vote on these changes?
That's not the way Greta proposed it to me.
Okay.
I asked specifically of Greta today because I explained to her the conversation somewhat going on with the shoreland, and I said, you know, can you look at some of these things? And I said, but if we make changes tonight, because she was proposing potentially a change that would help the project we were talking about, but they know the timeline's so far out, it didn't matter. But she was saying we could make changes tonight, and as long as, if it took 2 days to make those changes, there's 15 days from that time it gets posted to the next meeting, then it's fine. You guys can make those changes without it going back to us.
Okay. The only other thing I had on page 8-9, the town doesn't approve the sign, we provide the sign. So that's a real minor little thing, just the wording should be changed.
Oh, for
Private roads, we provide the sign.
That's a good point.
It's just a small thing.
Semantics.
Yeah. Board members and then public, or Amy and then the public.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
I'm good.
You here for,
I guess the biggest, I've talked to Amy, is we have a property over on New Street, and according to the way my understanding of these bylaws is, it's definitely gonna be favorable for us. to expand. And the question I've got is, if I want to put 2 units there, can I have 2 separate units? All because there's already 2 units on that property.
That's
Is
essentially.
that a one building, or can they be 2 separate structures?
I don't think without knowing the size and everything, we should really get into that tonight, and I hate to say that, but that should be something that you sit down and ask Amy, and if Amy needs to talk with, and get some help with what the bylaw changes are, because I don't think we should get into people's specific development here tonight. It's really looking at
Yeah.
what's written here, and then I think, Al, it is intended to be more favorable, because one of the issues is to get more housing, because the state's got a housing shortage.
Right.
Yeah. But
What I would say is that is similar to what the project I spoke with Regional about today, and that Greta over at Regional is looking into. So what you could do is give a somewhat a draft proposal to Amy, and we could provide that to Regional and work with Greta in September when it comes to changing the bylaws to make things like that work.
But Mike, can I read the bylaw right now?
Go ahead.
Just reading the words, I'm not commenting on his project. Section 315, dwellings per lot. There shall be no more than 2 residential buildings per lot, except as provided in sections 9495, which is your PUD district. So you can't have more than 2 residential buildings on a lot.
But you can have 2.
You can
It
have
says there shall be no more than
No more than 2.
2 residential buildings.
What I would say is Regional, what Greta is looking at is what makes sense for a
Cottage
minimum PUD size with water and sewer, and a minimum PUD size without water and sewer. So that would come into play, would be the lot size.
So my second part of that question, like you're just saying, if you've got 2 structures per the bylaws, can I add to those structures?
If they're connected.
Can we connect? So I've got 2 individual spots now. Can I connect to one of them?
So the way our rules are, New Street isn't water and sewer.
Yeah.
The way our bylaws written, we had this discussion, we talked about it. As long as you're in your lot, and this is something, actually, I think a good question for the select board. A lot of towns interpret the law that was only for 4 units. We wrote the bylaws broad enough, as long as you can get enough parking spots in per unit and you get into your lot coverage, you can have as many units effectively on those lots as possible. Now you have to go to DRB over 4. And so you can't have more than 2 buildings. You have to meet your lot coverage, you have to meet your parking spot requirement, but the number of, if you only want to get them permitted, you're allowed 4 units on that lot, or 4 residential units on that lot. If you want to go to the DRB, potentially be more, but again, you can only have, because I'm not speaking that, I'm just the broad district.
As long as they're connected.
And we did have that conversation, do we want to limit that? And the conversation was, no, because what a lot of people are doing in other towns is they're taking that half-acre lot, and now they're subdividing it to get another 4 unit out back, and you're like, you know what, it might be just more efficient if they build 12 units on that half-acre, the 8 units in one building, than to have them do the subdivision and have a weird parking lot, and people are getting really creative with,
Oh, they're gonna.
you know, this
They'll take
infill,
it
so it's
for-
like, we'd rather have them, I think the
Smart from the
conversation,
beginning.
come to the DRB and have a conversation to make it look good, instead of, you know,
Skirting the rules.
to make it all work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was,
And I think it's fair to say that these changes, you know, are making it better for the village area, you know, residents, and should help the housing issue.
well, and clean up, because I mean, quite frankly, I, full disclosure, do real estate development, and I've talked to Ross, like, I did a project in Eastburg, that if they hadn't allowed me more units, I wouldn't have bought the old building, because it wasn't worth fixing up, unless I got the more units in the building. So as you get these rundown properties,
Yeah.
someone's not buying them to tear down and replace with a single family home. It just, the economics don't make sense, but if they could tear down or fix up and make it a duplex or a 3 unit or a 4 unit, you get that investment in your community. So I don't own any land. in it.
Yeah, it all makes
Okay.
a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it is good stuff.
Anybody else?
Well, I just would quickly propose that the changes you're gonna draft up, Corey, email to Brian, so
Yeah, I'll
he can email to the board members.
I'll email it to
Or,
Christina.
I mean, Christina, excuse me, that's right.
Good job. All
Yeah,
the work,
good job.
lot of work.
How we doing? Good.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
I got
We also have one, potentially two openings on the board. Anybody interested?
Beautiful, man. The green.
Alright.
I was trying to pull it out. Hold tight. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Have a good one, Al.
You too, thank you very much.
Over there.
Oh, okay.
Out in that area.
Alright. We lost Earl.
We have to close the public hearing.
Yeah, we're gonna move on from the public hearing. We didn't officially open it as far as a vote, but the public hearing for the proposed amendments to the Swanton Land Use Development Regulations and zoning map are hereby closed. We're gonna move on to the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, discussion of proposed Lanier, I would say Lasner, but I would be corrected from a history of the pronunciation, road stormwater project. Josh, good evening.
Yeah, good to see
We're
you
gonna give
all.
Earl just one minute here. and we'll be right back.
Lanier.
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 Ah, gotta roll the tongue too, huh? Lanier.
That's how the visual
Lanier.
English pronounce it.
Okay, Lanier to you.
Well, that's the Swanton French.
30 years I'd been here, and this was the year that I was corrected on how to pronounce that. I asked a lot of people, I'd spell it out for them, and yeah, I get very few Lanier, but it's all good. I love it.
I get corrected on a weekly basis.
Oh, yeah?
Well, it's like Gagne, right?
Gagne.
G-N-E.
Gagne,
We don't-
Gagne,
We
I
don't
mean,
say Gagne, do we?
where I grew up, we did. Yeah. All right, continued discussion from a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
Turn it over to you,
Thanks
Josh.
for having me here, and I'm also joined via Zoom with our engineering consultant, environmental consultant Andres, and he'll also be here to speak on the project and answer any remaining questions from the select board. But just to go back to our previous discussion, what we're really trying to get out of this is to really display the operation and maintenance agreement and really get a signature so that we can begin the process of putting this project out to bid. Just to go back to it, we have a commitment from the village to move forward with the beach section of the property, and we're really looking forward to really tying this together because we're looking at the upland practices by Lanier Road and also looking at the downstream practices by the beach. So I may have sent you a memo. Brian, we have delivered it to you back in middle of April. So I guess I'll open it up to you all and see what remaining questions you have regarding the project itself, regarding the operation and maintenance agreement. I do have copies of each.
Well, we got a property owner down there that seems to be left out of the loop. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, so we want to ensure that everybody is kept in the loop in this project. But before we start to move forward with the construction phase of the project and the implementation phase of the project, we need to ensure that the operation and maintenance is going to be adopted by the town before we start to make the commitment of actually engaging with the residents in that area. So after this conversation, if the agreement gets signed is when we will actually start to liaise with that private landowner who is on the corner, and they are not forgotten about. So we also want to ensure that people on that road are going to know about the project. So what I mean by that is maybe not individually knocking on every door. Of course, we want to understand who that landowner is and make a conversation, but printing out a pamphlet and distributing it to the project. When we do land on a timeline for when the project will be constructed, we do want to have that good faith and ensure that people along that road know, oh, why is there an excavator here in the fall? What is going on? Of course, being able to explain the project, being able to come back to a select board meeting and talk about the project once we have that defined timeline.
Just one of the questions I have, I'm looking at this map and it comes off the Lanier Road and goes down towards the beach. How far back is this sand filter gonna go from the edge? Just say, for example, the edge of the road, is it 10 feet, 20 feet?
Yeah. Andres, can you speak on that particularly?
Yeah, can you just repeat the question? So we're right at the corner of the road. So is the question how far it extends up? Let's see if I can pronounce it. Lania Road? No. Is that the question? How far up the road?
I'd like to know how far it's gonna take, how far for this sand filter, you got the lake road, and then you
Yep.
make the very sharp left turn, and you got the beach. If you got the road, say this is the road, and you got a little drainage ditch, how far back from the edge of the road into the property that's owned by Mr. Coleman, how far back is that gonna go?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's, I can measure it off here if you can take a look. I think it's about, from the edge of the road, maybe, it really just drops right into the sand filter there. And then from there, it's probably, across the bottom 10 feet or something, somewhere around that.
One question I have is, do you think it would add any more, make areas more prone to moisture, like people's properties, than it otherwise would have if it's not there?
So it wouldn't, because there's actually, so the way this thing is designed, there's a sand bed in the bottom, then there's a perforated drain in the bottom of it, underneath the sand. There's a 4-inch perforated drain, so that keeps actually the bottom dry. That perforated drain comes out, and daylight's kind of out where the sand filter ends, where there's a cross culvert that goes under the lake road there, and so it daylight's right there. So it wouldn't be adding any, additional flow or anything, additional moisture to the property at all.
I've got a question here. I'm looking at what I see is, I think the property boundaries, dash line, dark. It looks to me like this installation goes on to the property owner property.
Right, some of the grading does extend out in there. I mean, the existing swale kind of does that as well. And so actually the note that we had was moving the swale closer to the road and then converting it. So, we kind of used the existing swale as the baseline and then kind of moved into the road towards the road further.
But I see in here, the actual sand filter bottom is on, especially at the corner, on the private property.
Right, so the swale that's there now is as well, so it's.
I understand that, but if the landowner is not in favor of this project, how does it move forward?
Well, I think we were operating under the assumption that basically if it's part of the town road drainage system, I mean, that's not a surveyed property line, that's, an assumed property line that's from the tax maps, so there was no boundary survey work that was done. So I think we were just under the assumption that if it's part of the town road drainage system and, it wouldn't really be changing that necessarily, just be kind of improving that condition, that it would, that would be acceptable, I guess, to kind of continue to maintain that.
Okay, and then another question is the other side of the road, the south side of the road. So we're not doing anything to treat the runoff from that side of the road,
Right.
which is fairly significant.
Right, so my recollection with this is that there was a determination made that was really more part of a stream at that point. And, the state is reluctant to allow, active management of a stream at that point. So that was why that we couldn't do anything in there. So this is really just focused on trying to better manage the runoff from the road itself and not necessarily kind of getting into a regulated stream course.
Can I get more?
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead, Nick.
Can I get more information about why this particular piece of property was chosen for the sand filter instead of like other ones like Sucker Brook or whatever that might be have more issues to it?
I mean, the project goes back actually several years, and it was these two projects were kind of prioritized in this original plan that was done for this area, where we kind of went through, you know, a ranking and prioritization assessment, and so, you know, these two kind of rose to the top, and that's why that they're included now. I mean, this was, you know, kind of brought through a couple different phases of design and prioritization, and it you know, it rose to the top because they were ones that could be implemented, you know, relatively easily, and they were, you know, they had some benefit to the town and to the village for, you know, improving water quality and reducing phosphorus. So certainly I know there's other big issues, and you know, this is just, these two kind of evolved, you know, through the process. Because they were deemed priority. Yeah.
Steve, your nickel?
Yeah, I may have asked the question the wrong way. I guess my question should have been, how far beyond the right-of-way that the town now enjoys will it go to accommodate this filter? Are we gonna go outside of the town right-of-way?
Right, I can measure it off here if you just give me a minute. I mean,
Sure.
It looks to be,
Yeah, we're going off the town right away.
Not being surveyed, it's hard to say, but this, what we're looking at certainly shows
Right.
it.
Yeah.
right, yeah, right, with the understanding that this is, you know, this is not a survey, it's just, you know, basically the tax maps. Right at that corner, it's about 6 or 7 feet beyond that, you know, that bolded line, into the parcel right there at the corner.
Well, I got two questions. One, if we agree to this, does that mean you can go forward with this project irregardless of how the property owners, if there's issues there?
So sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Wow, if we agree to this, does that give you authority to go ahead with the project irregardless of how the landowners feel? Because they may have some legitimate issues.
Right, I mean, I think, you know, for the purposes of the meeting tonight, we're trying to secure kind of it's the operation and maintenance of the system. So, you know, we're looking for the town, I guess, to sign on to the operation and maintenance. If there was an issue with the private landowner not agreeing to the project, I don't think, you know, I'm just speaking on behalf of Friends. I'm not the, you know, we're just the design consultant.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they would want to go ahead if there was an issue with the landowner there, you know, rejecting the project. So, I mean, I think we would want to, if the town feels that that's important to deal with, then I think we would want to get an answer to that.
And I'll echo that, Andre. So yes, like this is the town component. This is the thing we need to be able to move forward, to be able to begin having those conversations so that we're able to bill our funder for that time, because we are a grant funded organization. And when we do manage these projects, they're billed out by tasks. So right now we are at the secure the operation and maintenance agreement task. That's task 4. Task 5 is when we can actually begin to bill our funder for going out and having conversations with private landowner regarding the implementation of the project and secure their support. So while we would love to be going out and having these conversations ahead of time, we have to be cognizant as a nonprofit that our time might not be covered for that just yet. So we do have to be taking a stepwise approach when we are managing these grants.
I fully understand that. I just gotta say it, and I don't want to, but I've got to say is I can't support this project. I think there's, Nick asked the question of Sucker Brook. Well, that's so big, Nick, you couldn't even, I mean, that would be multi-million dollars to try to do something there and purchase all this land. And huge retention pond, etc. It's the flow there is just so significant. But what I see coming out 150 feet from me is more material there than I would see in 100 years cleaning out of this ditch right there. And I'm all for projects that demonstrate and show the public we're trying to do some stuff, but from a town perspective, road commissioner perspective, maintaining this and so on, I hate to say it, but I can't support it.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, just second, and we'll open it up, okay? Yeah.
Is this the best alternative? Are there potentially other designs? There's a fair amount of maintenance involved in this, and I all my life I did add retention ponds. I did there's issues there for the town. You know, it's kind of a lot of responsibility. I think. Can you come up with something better?
You know, I haven't been on this project since the beginning of it. I'm coming out at the final design phase when we're looking to move it into implementation. And I'll tell you what I don't know. I am not an engineer. I am not an environmental consultant. I work for the nonprofit. We rely on our partners like Andres of Watershed Consulting to be able to interpret the land use conditions. And we put our faith behind our consultants to determine what is the best practice for the given area. And opposite the side of the road is conserved land too, so it runs into other issues that you have to deal with. I think it's an amazing thing that Swan is 50% conserved, but that also runs us into issues because we are doing non-regulatory projects. So the issues with the sediment coming out of Sucker Brook and leading onto McQuam Shore Road could be coming from a regulatory stance. We are an organization that runs on good faith. We run off our partnerships with the town. We are 3 people. We are looking to do stormwater projects that are being brought to us and try to act in that good faith. And while we recognize that there is larger issues at foot that are not going to get solved in one small sand filter project, but we like to think that, you know, little snowflakes are going to snowfall, and if we can really start to show that these projects are possible and that they can be implemented, that we hope that it's going to be a chain reaction. We don't sit here and say that these issues are going to get solved in even my generation. It's going to take time, but it's going to take those conversations and being able to display projects to the wider public so that when we do come back and have conversations around McQuam Shore and around the Sucker Brook, we're able to show who we are as an organization and the kind of the work that we do and change the narrative.
May I just actually add to what Josh was just saying, just to give the history? This was extensively kind of vetted, you know, went through many years actually of work. And I know the reality here is that there are a lot of natural resource constraints. So I remember, you know, kind of going through a couple different options and really, you know, this was just kind of keyed in on and you know, as a valuable but relatively small improvement, right? So I don't think we were hanging our hat that this would be solving the phosphorus problem in Lake Champlain. It was just it was a good project that would be permissible within kind of the constraints of all of the different wetlands and other natural resource issues that we had on this site. And I mean, I guess just one question for the board: if the issue was specifically the encroachment on the private land, and that could be resolved by potentially bringing this a little bit closer to the road to where we, you know, determine that we were within the right of way, if there is any encroachment on private land, would that change the board's opinion about supporting the project, or no?
I personally would be more supportive of it if it didn't affect someone's private property. At this point, you run into a roadblock right there if it does, so you gotta get that issue solved somehow.
So what are your contours there, 1 foot?
They are 1 foot, yes.
Yeah, so the problem you've got is you've got about 12 feet to play with from edge of roads, especially on Lake Street. You got about 12 feet to play with, so there's not much room with the drop off you've got there.
Right.
And I do want to say I don't expect Friends of Northern Lake Champlain to solve the phosphorus problem. I've over the years heard millions of dollars by our senators and stuff to do stuff, and we've got very little to show for it. It's still increasing, it's still a problem. That's not what my concern is here. My concern is for the landowner, not really for the project. My concern is the maintenance of it. Not that the maintenance to me is a real big issue, but it still falls upon the town. I think there's maybe some other things, and I'm naive because I do not know exactly what you all have looked at or been tasked to look at of other places to do a project, but I think it's a very limited space from the edge of the road to play with the drop off that's there, and again, I'd like to be supportive, but I'm not.
One more question. What happens at the end? The life expectancy is 10 years. Is the town going to be responsible for redoing it?
No, Andre's correct me if I'm wrong, we put a life expectancy on the project so we can actually show the phosphorus reduction over that span of time.
Yeah, and I think that's just, the minimum that the state, kind of the standard that the state.
Yeah, but my question is, I guess, so what you're saying is you're gonna do this project for 10 years, it might be, I'm assuming it's beneficial. Any little thing will help the lake. We all gotta do our share. I don't have an issue with that. But at the end of 10 years, it's just abandoned and we go back to dumping it in the lake. Is that what's gonna happen with this project?
Well, at the end of 10 years, the project just doesn't go away. It's still going to be a sand filter.
But are we gonna be obligated to maintain it forever?
No, that's
what I'm saying. It's just gonna fall, deteriorate and not be effective anymore. If it's not maintained.
I think the idea is that the state expects, the commitment for the 10 years. I think the best case scenario would be, it would continue to be maintained beyond that, but even with 10 years, the state, I think, has determined that would be sufficient enough to, have a meaningful impact for what the expense of it would be.
But I'm not sure your question got answered.
No, well, basically the answer is that's what's gonna happen. So you should come up with an idea where that's not gonna happen.
I'm not following, I'm sorry. I'm slightly.
Do something that's permanent.
Well,
this is not a permanent fix to the project. It just basically, as long as we maintain it and it's taken care of, eventually the sand's gonna have to be replaced and all that. Somebody's gonna have to be responsible for that.
The sand.
That's out of Josh's and my control, because that's just what that's typical for any project. It's not just this project. That's just the standard way.
All right. What are we going to do as a board?
Well, I think Mr. Coleman had a question.
Yeah, I was just concerned about what studies have been done that there is even any water flow on the corner of that property, or who has been there to spend any time to see what, is there active water even flowing around that corner of that road from Monnier Road to 36th.
Andres, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've studied this for sure. And there have been the plans, and a lot of work and analysis has gone into it. It's not just necessarily also just viewing that water, but it's we use modeling tools and mapping. We've kind of used all the state accepted methodologies, and Friends has kind of, like I said, gone through the channels to do this. So
you've actually had folks that have been there and have physically done studies?
Yes. Yeah, there's been folks physically there and surveyed, completed the certain surveys and
other than completing surveys, what specifically did they do?
Well, a topographic survey. Actually collecting field data of, the way the water flows in that area.
Can I
Do you have a
jump?
record of when that was done? Sorry, this is Melissa Pullman, Seth's wife. I'd like to know if you have record of when that was done. I work from home and I'm here 24/7 and I have never seen anybody in that ditch.
I'm sure somewhere there is, yeah. I mean, I don't have the, like I said, this goes back now several years, when the original project was started.
I'd like to jump in here real quick. And I think you asked a very valid question. Water is not always flowing in there. Is that what you're telling me?
I mean,
That ditch was created.
our house was
when he
built
built.
in, 2015, or 2016, sorry. And we had a culvert put in for the driveway. And even on the wettest day, I haven't seen water go through that.
Through that culvert,
Through my culvert going down, which leads to the corner of the road.
Right.
36.
What about the culvert that comes across from the east side? If I go up there tonight, will I see water flowing in that ditch?
You may. You may
There's
from
no
that
water
side.
flowing. I just mowed the lawn. The water in there is stagnant and not moving.
Yeah, right now it is.
Mr. Chair, I think the question is, do we want to proceed with this?
Yeah, I think.
We talked about it, so is that the issue? We can move this discussion to a vote?
I think
whether or
we're
not
at that point.
That we want to pursue this, and we can talk about it all night. I would make a motion that we not follow through on this.
Do I hear a second?
I ain't crazy about doing it that way, Steve.
That's
I would make a motion that we not sign off on this tonight and that they're gonna have to address the issues and concerns of the landowner. Present them with the data that you've got and go out there and meet with them and get an understanding together of what's going on. And then maybe, but I've still got a real concern over having to be responsible for maintaining that.
My reason for asking to not go forward.
Well, I definitely would not even consider it until then.
What was that?
I'll second Earl's motion.
Earl's motion? No, first of all, we got a motion on the floor from Steve.
Well, we didn't get a second on
Well,
it.
that's what I'm getting ready to ask. So, I can't second, can I, as a chair?
I think you can.
Steve's motion? Yeah, then I'm gonna second Steve's motion.
Okay.
Now I wanna open it up for discussion. And the discussion is basically the town would not support or basically sign off the maintenance agreement for this project.
I just don't think we need to go forward at all. That's the intent of my motion,
Okay?
that we just bring this to closure and we just go on to the next agenda item.
Any other discussion?
I personally think if they could discuss stuff with the property owners and if they can come up with or somewhat of a solution to the property, the issue with the property, if partially being on someone's property, that they, we should at least give it one last chance.
Well, the other thing I wanna say real quick under discussion, and one of the pieces of equipment is a Vector truck. We don't own one. Village does, we don't. So as far as jetting that thing, we don't have a piece of equipment right now to jet that it talks about, high pressure water jet. So, again, any other discussion, we can take a vote. Hear no other discussion. All those in support of Steve's motion, state aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Nay.
Okay. So, tonight you wanted the town to agree to maintenance of it, right?
That's not my motion.
I know, well, you have to make your motion now because
Okay, all right.
Steve had a motion, we carried through with that, so if you wanna make a motion.
All right, I make a motion that the town not commit to maintaining this at the present time until the issues with the landowners and potential design issues are addressed as the concerns that were brought at this meeting tonight.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made second. Any further discussion? I guess the only thing I'm gonna say in the discussion, again, we don't have the equipment to do it, so we're really prolonging something that we're not even equipped to do. So I don't know why we're prolonging this, but if there's no other discussion, we can vote on it. All those in favor of Earl's motion, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed,
Opposed?
need to end this.
Ayes have it. So that's where you're at.
Yeah.
We did not approve tonight is what you came here for, and you've got the concerns by 3 of the board members that need to be addressed. And it's up to you whether you come back with that or not.
Hey, regardless, I appreciate everyone's here's time.
Because I know you said in the flow of things, you gotta get our approval before you go to the landowner, but that's the condition set by the board.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for what the Friends of Lake Champlain try to do.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
guys.
Take care. Department update, I'll do a more formal update, second meeting of the month. Line striping proposals in the package. And basically, I
Forgot to look, how much did we budget for that? Did we budget enough?
18,000.
So we got enough to cover it.
We got enough to cover it. And the price they gave is the same price they gave last year.
Really?
Yeah, it's 24 cents with the double. They just quote it here as a
Yeah,
single
yeah.
yellow.
Yeah.
But when you divide the quantity by the mileage and everything,
I
you
looked at it.
get 14 miles.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the line striping proposal as presented for the amount of $17,740.80 to L&D Safety Marketing Corporation.
Marking, yep. There is a second.
I'll second.
Motion's been made in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next item is the bid opening for the sale of the truck, which there is no bids,
There are
right?
no bids received.
Nobody, I thought, I guess not. Eh? Well, you better put it on one of them truck things. You gotta go Google it or something. You guys got them phones. They have marketplaces all over New England. Somebody's bound to end up wanting it. But you're gonna have to find the place to advertise it.
Yeah, we talked about, and I talked with Kevin a little bit about it, and we also might come up with a different proposal, but yeah, right now there's no bids, and a lot of people are onto that particular engine and the issues with it,
Yeah.
and
But there's gonna be somebody somewheres that knows he can make some money with it. I guarantee you that. That's just the way it is.
okay.
You just gotta advertise it.
Old Town Business, library windows update.
Okay, the windows, that's in the KDR, King's Daughter's room, are being taken care of as we speak. They went in today, Patrick Menard, after a lengthy waiting for a long time for the parts that Laz wanted put on them. Laz agreed that we'll just order different parts. It'll still be an improvement. And so Patrick was installing those today, and he will be finishing tomorrow. So that will be taken care of.
Speaking of library, do we have the final bills from
No, the only thing we've gotten from a final bill has been the Che installation, which came in at what they did plus the work change orders, the 2 work change orders. It's exactly what they bid on, but we haven't received anything else from anybody else.
Okay, yeah, when we're done, it'd be good to go over that, and see how that compares to what we
Now we're gonna next move into the gutters and snow guards. You're gonna have to We did talk about
Well,
getting that
yeah, I
done.
spoke with Laz about that, the gutters, and he feels that with all the rain we've had, we haven't, that what we've done to the basement seems to be working.
You haven't seen any issues in that basement,
No.
but there's no sense pushing it.
So he thought that it was probably not needed between, we had Kevin do that work plus.
Yeah, I know the work's been done there, I seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it'd be a good investment, but if the board doesn't wanna go forward with it,
I say,
we'll go forward with it.
why don't we monitor a couple months, let the summer rains and everything, see what we get. and-
Yeah, and it might be part of our capital budget next year, you know.
But we have some money left over, what we appropriated for that insulation job, don't we?
We don't know.
You don't know, you think we're gonna?
Menards is gonna, they're
Run
gonna
way
be-
over, right?
They had to take down that whole ceiling and there was, the whole curved wooded area.
And they, taking out the dock involved taking out refrigeration lines, so that, they had to get additional people to do that, so, yeah, we don't know yet. Yeah.
Well, let's see if we got any left over, then we can discuss again if we want to.
Yep. Signing of Swanton Rex Constitution bylaws.
We've got a copy here that, these are the bylaws that were passed, and Christina printed them off with signature lines, and to get them out of that.
In the last meeting, we had one or two changes, those have been made.
Second to the last page.
Second to the last, and then what we'll do is send
And we'll give
them.
them to Nicole. And once your
Yeah,
board,
there we
then
go.
bring them back and we'll record them. Can I leave them here until the board meeting, just?
Yeah.
Now, Nicole, has the rec commission signed this yet?
No. That's their page to do that. And then, when
I think
they-
they're waiting for us.
yeah, then when they, everything is
Have
signed,
Nicole sign them and give it back to me.
when everything is signed, they'll come back and they'll get recorded
Okay.
in the miscellaneous report.
Kathy recorded it.
I'll sign it whenever I get to go ahead and drive, I can drive again.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Update on the Moyle Valley Rail Trail parking area. Contractor did move in 2 weeks ago. Did the clearing and grubbing, put in the sand layer and put in the, most of the gravel area of the parking area. Waiting on paperwork from the contractor before they can go in and start working the foundations for the picnic pavilion, for some signs, and for the enclosure around the porta potty. So things haven't been there the last couple days. I do not see them meeting the 1 August deadline, which is gonna kick in probably liquidated damages. I may be wrong, but at the rate things are going, it's slow. And then based on the elevations there, the quantity of sand prepared by the engineering firm is way low. So there's gonna be a change to put in more material. And I can explain that more at the next meeting and the quantities, but there's definitely gonna be an increase in the amount of material that has to come onto that site to do it right. The area where the picnic pavilion is, you take the existing grade and what the finished grade is based on the design, there's 2 feet right there that there's no material. So that's gotta be brought in and stuff. So we have the money based on what the state gave us the grant level for, that sort of thing, and we have the matching funds, which we already committed to this project, but I will be talking to you more about that. Next item, unless there's any questions, discussion of proposed changes to the purchasing policy.
Okay. The purchasing policy, as we did discuss before, and then you sent in, you were to send in any questions or possible changes, and I received some from Joel, and I received suggestions also from Nick. So, so I was wondering if anybody had any other,
I think I sent you some.
you did?
Okay.
Yeah, and so,
But Joel got them in his recommendation, so it's fine.
yeah. So that is what we've got here, and what Nick had raised, well, he had two. I'll leave that to the discussion of the in the first paragraph, but the second paragraph, I certainly agree. The advertising for bids, unless it's required by the grant, if it's a federal money involved or state money involved, it goes to newspapers. An ad into the newspaper is very expensive for the amount of readership that they're providing. But that's just what Nick had suggested. I certainly don't disagree with that. So if that's your pleasure, what I will do for the next meeting is to go in, if there's no other changes, and I'll incorporate these changes and we'll go with the.
The other concern I brought up was about the road foreman.
Yeah.
And wanting your opinion, I don't know too much about wanting things about also raising, since we raised it for the road commissioner, would it make sense to also raise it for the road foreman, who's probably also experienced similar cost inflation issues?
Yeah, and Nick, actually, you can't see it, but did propose that in the comments that I sent, the 3,000. So yes, we did take a look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
There's a lot of discussion and make
go ahead,
changes,
and
and
those changes will be done
we'll move ahead with that.
for next week, or next time.
Okay, was it town garage? Oh, you wanted an update on
Oh,
that?
yeah, update on that.
Okay, of course, the testing has been done. It's been done.
No, I'm talking about the town, not that
Oh,
town.
The paperwork.
Yeah, for the land deal, yeah.
They're still awaiting from the attorneys, get the paperwork from.
You better keep bugging them, like,
That's not our attorney.
who's the attorney?
I believe it's Mr. Ralph. That's but there's, in any case, I've been on,
Our attorney ought to be able to contact him and say, hey, look, we gotta get this done.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna probably have to do that. I hope he's doing that.
Should we put an expiration date on this?
well, it's getting
Yeah.
well over a year.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous,
I mean,
so.
we could back out of the deal after so many more months.
So,
Tell him we just got offered 150,000, he needs help, and that'll probably get him moving.
but I thought you meant the,
No,
old growth.
no, I know that there hasn't been any, but you're waiting for the state, right?
yeah, waiting for them
Yeah,
to
that's
give
what
me
I
a
thought.
blessing. But no, okay, well, I'll get hold of Brian Monahan
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
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 I don't know, maybe the chair might have to step in here and sometime might light his fire a little more, I don't know.
You wanna handle this one and talk to Brian himself and see what's up?
Yeah, I can, I don't know the guy, and I don't have his phone number.
Oh, wait,
but-
Brian, you don't?
No.
Brian Rao? No, I'm talking about.
Oh, Brian Rao, yeah, I can talk to Brian, too.
I think it's worth a question to him and
See
we
if
can-
You want to go through that?
It'd probably be more effective with him talking to his.
All right, yeah, good idea.
Yeah,
Ask him if he's changed his mind.
I kinda doubt it, but I know we're just kinda swamped right now, I'm sure, but that's Brian, you gotta keep after him.
So you're talking 3 different Brians here.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I meant Brian Rao. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but our lawyer's Brian Manny.
Yeah, oh yeah, Monahan, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the library sprinkler system.
Okay, library sprinkler system. In the budget for this year and last fall, I had asked that we've got some sprinkler heads that need to be replaced. By law, they've shelf life. And the estimate we had received and put in the budget was $6,590. And talking with Rob Rain, due to various material costs and whatnot, that estimate, now the cost would be $7,175. So I'm just looking for the okay. It's $585 difference. It's gonna get done this year.
What budget is that coming out of?
It's been budgeted library library
Okay.
budget, yeah. It's the maintenance of the library, so.
Then we still have money left in that, we haven't used it all, have we? Or do you just budget specifically for this?
That was budgeted specifically for sprinklers, so there's other maintenance in there,
Yeah.
but this is.
Yeah, just have to pull the rest out of the other maintenance.
There's a maintenance fund, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
support, I mean,
Yeah, I do, you
Yeah, we
need a
don't-
motion, do we need a motion to approve it?
Well, yeah, probably, because.
All right, I'll move that we approve the increase for the amount of,
$585, so the total amount will be $71.75.
all right, for the library sprinkler repair.
Yeah.
Second.
motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Newtown business, ethics ordinance is required by state of Vermont.
Okay, we're all, we've talked about the ethics standards and put it in the state of Vermont. And there is has to be passed as an ordinance. The village has done it. And it's on the website. And we basically, this is the whistleblower protections of the ethics. This is direct from the leagues, the cities and towns legal resource department. It's exactly what the village has put out. And so if we pass this, we'll be in good standard. This basically spells out the policy of an employee or official of the town in the event that it's for the protection of the whistleblower, if there's a whistleblower. And what they can or cannot say to the in testimony or the general to the general assembly, et cetera, et cetera. So
Well, we have to start an ordinance process, or we can just automatically adopt it?
Adopt it as a policy.
Oh, adopt as, not as an ordinance?
Right. Yeah.
Do we wanna take, we don't really have a lot of choice, do we?
No, I didn't. It's the state law that says that you have to adopt it.
Well, I mean, I'm curious what, and I don't want to spend much time on it tonight, what does the state law actually say? Because this comes from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. This isn't even a product of the state of Vermont.
No, this is but pretty much the state law on the ethics is that a whole host of things, and it's covered in the ethics training, but this is to provide protection. In the ethics law, there's protection for whistleblowers. And so this is the policy of how we would handle that.
And we're required to adopt the policy.
But I know that the legislature, when I testified to the Senate Government Operations Committee for the annexation of the village for that parcel at First Street, they were talking about they're revising the ethics law again this year, so I'm not sure what they're going to come out with. So I said, well, okay, so this probably is just temporary. But
what do you folks want to do?
Well, you adopt the policy, I guess, and be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even read it, to tell you the truth. It's in front of me tonight, and I haven't even really looked at it.
Should we look at it and come back?
Oh, yeah, put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. If people want to read it, fine. If you don't, fine, but I don't really want to just approve it tonight. Request of tax collector to use services of attorney Von Como for tax sales.
Yes. Betty has got about 11 properties that are probably going to go for tax sale, and she just needs the okay to use Von Como as the attorney for that. He's represented us before in tax sales, and
What's the price, Brian?
I'm not sure what the price is, but she didn't say what the price is, but.
I mean, first of all, he's very competent. I just wanna know.
Actually,
What is he gonna charge us per, is it by the hour? Is a kind of a general number of hours in each one of these sales? And what is he charging us per hour? And does Betty work for him?
no, she's retired.
Oh, she has retired, good
She
for her.
retired,
Good.
yeah. She just said this was standard. It's a good question. I don't know what he is charging, but usually that's involved with the tax sale, so, we get.
But we have to pay it though.
Right, yeah. So I can find out from her.
I just think it's appropriate that we ask. We just don't say, I mean, he's a good guy, he does good work, but we just can't say, oh, that's great, just go ahead without knowing what the price is, what the cost is.
Okay. But actually, I would like to also talk to him about doing our town business.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you
I think that's reasonable.
don't wanna approve this tonight?
Well, no, I'd like to know what it's gonna cost us, that's all. I'm sure it's gonna be reasonable and competitive, but we should know.
Should be on the records.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that.
Okay.
You good with that?
Yeah.
I will-
All right, Nick, you good with that?
Yes, I'm good with that as well.
Okay. Discussion of DRB and Planning Commission applicant review process. DRB has somebody they think's interested, and they called me, and I said I'd discuss it with you folks, because to me, I think it's reasonable that the DRB interview them first, and then come to us and say, we've talked with this candidate, and we think it's a viable candidate, and then we approve it, but I said I'm not gonna make that decision without
That makes sense.
discussion with the board.
Makes complete sense, they gotta work with them people. I don't know, and we can always say no.
Right, and yeah, and we've still gotta be the ones
That's
to
right.
actually
Yep.
approve it, but
Mhm.
that gives them a chance to do the interview process and get comfortable with it, so.
Yeah.
See a lot of head nods, you okay with that, Nick? Okay, so if you don't mind, would you call Spencer and
Yep,
pass that on to him?
yep.
And the same with the planning commission, if they had somebody to nominate for this spot.
Yeah, you
Right.
could let Ross know the
Yeah.
same as well.
Yep.
Okay, community economic development,
Nothing to report.
Well, you think we'll have something by the end of the week, Nicole, from Andy?
Possibly, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. Now, did you already have somebody lined up to actually do the sign? So
Yeah, as soon
what's-
as you give me a graphic, I'm gonna ask them to do us, what the sign would look like and bring it to the board to make sure they're comfortable with
Okay,
that. Yep. Any other necessary business? Correspondence?
I got one thing in correspondence, kind of surprised. What did I do with
Got the care partners?
it? The Care Partners, yes, the Care Partners. We got a request for a donation from the Care Partners. We did not have an appropriation request from them, and just wondered what your pleasure would be with that.
I've never actually heard of the organization,
They do a great job.
so you're aware of them then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They're really integral in elder care.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, boy,
That's your alley, yeah.
my age, I ain't gonna fight that.
Yeah.
Well, should we recommend that they get on our list next year for budgeting?
We could do that, if they,
But if they're that good of an organization, I think we could afford a small donation.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying,
Yeah, okay.
I just want,
Yeah.
yeah. But do we have a budget for donations?
No,
No.
no, it would have to either come out of miscellaneous or right now our special funds, which
Yeah. I think miscellaneous would cover it, because it's not gonna be that much.
No, yeah.
so,
How about 500, and we send them a letter if they want to do annual, that they come to us for a request for an annual appropriation. I
Yeah.
just throw that out there.
Yeah.
And make sure they're aware of when we need the information by, yeah.
yeah.
Someone wanna make that motion?
I'll make that motion to donate a gift of $500 to Care Partners Adult Day Center.
I'll second it.
You wanna put in your motion where it's coming from?
Miscellaneous.
That would be general fund miscellaneous.
Yeah, general fund miscellaneous.
Yeah, general fund miscellaneous.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Gotta take care of Earl here.
Opposed? So
Take care
moved.
of Earl.
Okay, moving right along. Correspondence, public comment. Upcoming events. No, we don't have any?
Well, I gave you the wrong, I think we got the wrong copy, because I went and edited the special
Say,
event.
get out of that easy.
Yeah, oh, you're.
The email, the one that came, the email's got them on it.
So anyways, well, the next meeting is
17th.
the 17th.
June 19th, the office is closed.
We're closed for Juneteenth. And then
DRB is the 26th.
the ERB is on the 26th at 6 PM. Here at the
The
town
next
hall.
planning commission public hearing is July 1st with the select board.
Right, which is the next regular meeting of the select board.
Okay,
That's 6/17, what's the next one?
6/19 is Juneteenth for close.
No, next meeting.
Oh, next meeting, July 1st.
No, June
No.
17th.
No,
No,
the 17th.
he already said
June
that.
17th.
He already said 17th.
June 17th, yeah.
Anything to add?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right,
When
executive
is high school
session.
graduation?
High school graduation is Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's convenient.
Executive session. Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn at 8:21.
I second it.
Motion made, second to adjourn at 8:21. All in favor state aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. AM Peisch coming next meeting,
Yeah,
folks,
just
so
come
just,
back. Yeah.
everyone remember that, get your
Okay,
questions.
that's why we got this material tonight, take a look at, we got two packets,
We
you
got
got
that-
the audit,
that
then you
last
got-
meeting.
what's
That was
this?
last meeting.
Oh, okay, that's why I got it now, okay.
See you, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Bye.